Good evening, you guys. First of all, let me tell you, I apologize. I'm using some new software, so it's a little probably going to be glitchy. Just bear with me if you would. Um, so, welcome to our new video podcast, True Crime and Woo. Um, I started this because I love writing about true crime, but it was weighing so heavily on my soul. So I started um, practicing Reiki and crystal healing, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that at another time. Um, but basically, my friend Jen and I were talking one morning, and very early, we got so excited about learning and practicing Reiki. I was telling her that while I was writing a case, it really got to my soul. So when I dreamed that night, I dreamed about crystals and Reiki as a way to clear my soul of any bad juju, I guess, so to speak. So I woke up and immediately chatted with Jen, and from that conversation, this podcast was sort of born. So while I love writing about true crime, no question about that, and I love talking about it, I don't want anybody to become depressed or have weight on their soul because of what I write. So, starting with this podcast, you can download the supplies list, which is sort of what you're seeing right now. Let's see if I can make it work. Oh, looky there. Which you probably have hanging around the house already. And I'm going to give you a list of a crystal or two, and an aromatherapy recipe to diffuse, maybe a candle color, and even a chakra to work with, in case that's your thing, and an intention. Feel free to combine these, only use one of them or none of them as you see fit, whatever you are most comfortable with. I love using them all, so there you have it. So basically, I've posted this in the group as well, the different recipes, so to speak, and I'm going to talk a little bit about why I chose the crystals and the colors that I did. So each podcast, excuse me, I'm going to be telling, hey there, I can't see your name. This is the weird thing about this software I've got to fix. But hi there, whoever just signed on. So each podcast, I'm going to be telling the story of a true crime. And before the story begins, I'm going to give you any advice on what, if any, crystals or aromas that you should diffuse, should you wish. At the end of the story, we're going to pause briefly and we're going to do a guided meditation about 3 or 4 minutes to clear the energy and to give peace or harmony to the victim and their families. Hey, Crystal, if you choose not to do meditation, hey, Jen, pray in your own way, but make sure you keep yourself grounded. So, with that said, welcome to my True Crime Diaries and Woo, or True Crime and Woo, where Nanny Annie's going to tell you a true crime bedtime story, and then we're going to meditate to clear our energy. Before we get started, you can download all the supply lists you might want to use in the Facebook group, or basically I'm going to have it posted at the website at truecrimeandwoo.com or truecrimediaries.com. To start with, I have an amethyst crystal that I'm wearing in preparation for this case. Amethyst is a protective crystal, and basically that's why I'm actually wearing it. I have a white candle lit. I don't know if you can see it or not, but I have a white candle lit to represent grief or sadness, right? It also represents protection. And I also recommend diffusing some kind of centering or balancing blend. And if you've already got one, then that's great. I created a blend called Justice that you're going to find in the show notes. And basically, it is this blend right here. It's got frankincense, myrrh, ylang ylang, LME, Roman chamomile, and lavender. And basically, this blend has different properties, and they all center around peace, calm, understanding, things like that. Now, if you're pregnant or you're going to have children around you that are under 5, you should eliminate the 2 starred ones, which are LME and myrrh, okay, from your blend. And if you don't have any of these oils, I recommend just 3 simple oils that you may already have: lavender, orange, and frankincense. Just those 3. It's a good blend, to kind of have around to make you feel a little better. A good blend to purchase that's already blended is the blend Let It Go from Amazon or Plant Therapy. It's excellent. Or Purify from Eden's Garden, Zen or Unity from Revive essential oils. And I've got links to all of those in the show notes. After the story is over, we're going to do a quick Q&A in case there's any questions or anything that you guys want to talk about. And then we'll do a guided meditation. So that's what this is all about. Now, I recommend you also have a clear quartz. I'm going to show you my, I say I am, I may lie. Okay. Basically, hello, this guy is what I want. It's probably very hard to see because I don't have my act together. There we go. As you can see, I've got it backwards, of course. Of course I do. But there's my little setup. Basically, I have everything on a selenite little platter, if you will, that helps charge my crystals. And the crystals that I'm using are clear quartz. While we listen to the story, it's for protection. It can help protect you from negative vibes as well. I've also got a smoky quartz that's used for centering and grounding and shield against psychic attack, emotional and environmental stress. And it's used extensively in healing and meditation. Then the amethyst for balancing the crown chakra. If you're feeling sort of out of sorts, blocked, mentally clumsy, you can try a short session with an amethyst and you're likely to find yourself refreshed, alert, and back in control. It helps still your mind and inspire enhanced meditative states. And then I've got another one over there that's kind of orange colors. It's carnelian. It improves concentration and removes extraneous thoughts if you're daydreaming or going to sleep. And during meditation. It also protects against envy, rage, and resentment, yours or others, and encourages a love of life. It's very useful for overcoming abuse of any kind and helping you to trust yourself and your perceptions. And abuse is one of the cases we're going to briefly be talking about. The candles I'm using are a red candle for righteous anger that, if directed positively, can overcome injustice and bring about change. An orange candle for matters involving law, justice, legal cases. Orange is attuned to the warmth, spirit, will, personal strength, authority, and alertness. And it's also used as a balancing element. And it kind of cleanses the negative attitudes, situations, and places, and promotes happiness and emotional healing. I think we'll need that after some of these cases. Royal blue is the other candle I'm using for, it's considered to be seekers of truth. The black to overcome evil. And white, of course, for purity. So the case we're actually going to be, or the post we're actually going to be talking about today is a look inside Murder by Degrees. And we're going to take a short look at 4 solved and unsolved horrible murders for this particular month, for the month of October, at True Crime Diaries. So, keep in mind that all states have some kind of murder degrees, right? Murder by degrees, and it's a statute normally. Occasionally they differ in name, but the results are pretty much the same with one exception. Not all states are capital punishment or the death penalty, right? Some states just say, murder 1 is, that's all you can get, the highest you can get, that, that's the way it goes. So federal law also has murder by degrees and capital punishment. And we can get into the double jeopardy aspect of it at another time on another case. And that's when you can be charged by both federal and state at the same time, so to speak. But for now, we're just going to go with murder by degrees in general. Keep in mind that as of October of this year, actually, 28 states have authorized capital punishment along with the federal government and the military. 6 states have recently abolished the death penalty. Illinois, Connecticut, Maryland, New Hampshire, and Colorado, replacing it with a mandatory life imprisonment with no possibility for parole. Nebraska also abolished the death penalty in 2015, then it reinstated it in 2016. Courts in Washington and Delaware recently ruled that states' capital punishment laws are unconstitutional. So it's up for debate. And fairness, reliability, cost of implementation, those things are kind of always at a question. I my husband has a famous saying that he says all the time. He is absolutely against the death penalty unless somebody hurts one of his kids or grandkids, and then he's all for it, right? I think most of us probably feel that way. My concern about the death penalty is, what if we find out 20 years later they were innocent, as has happened in most recent past. So I'm a little leery of it, but I do think that there are some cases that are absolutely death penalty qualified. When you think of the big ones like Ted Bundy, Arthur Cross, the big serial killers that truly deserved death, Charles Manson, right? Maybe the death penalty was the right thing for them. I don't know. I'm not going to say one way or the other if it's right or wrong. That's up to you and how you feel about it. But more recently, the federal government carried out the execution of a federal prisoner for the first time in 17 years. Only 10 executions, none of them have been military, have occurred since 1963. And none of these have been women, which I found kind of odd. 7 were executed this year alone. And there's a lot of information you can find, but one of the websites that's kind of interesting to look at is, it's called List of People Executed by the U.S. Federal Government. Yeah. So that is something, to be thinking about. So, with capital punishment kind of set aside for the moment, let's talk about the degrees of murder, right? There's almost always a murder in the first degree, right? Or first degree murder. In federal law, according to 18 U.S. Code 51, murder is defined as the unlawful killing of a human being with malice aforethought. Every murder perpetrated by poison, lying in wait, or any other kind of willful, deliberate, malicious, and premeditated killing, or committed in the perpetration of or attempt to perpetrate any arson, escape, murder, kidnapping, treason, espionage, sabotage, aggravated sexual abuse, and child abuse, burglary, robbery, those kind of things, or, as part of a pattern or practice of assault or torture against a child, which always breaks my heart, or children, or perpetrated from a premeditated design, unlawfully and maliciously to effect the death. Now, all of that means they planned it and they killed the person without any regard to how they, how they were as a person. It also means that, that it could have been while they were robbing them. It could have been while they were doing something else illegal, right? Premeditation is always something that's kind of interesting. Premeditation can be something that is done in a moment before, and there's been some cases that have been kind of, I'm not so sure about those, but where premeditation was literally the instant before it happened, right? But normally premeditation you see in these murder cases that, they've planned it, they've got somebody to help them with it, they've done things, things like that, right? So that's pretty much what murder in the first degree means. Now, most states have a second degree murder as well, right? So they've almost always got a first degree. But it doesn't necessarily mean capital murder. Second degree murder basically means it's serious enough murder, but it's not premeditated, right? Some cases that means it's aggravated in some manner, like in conjunction with a robbery or while committing another act. And then there's third degree murder. Now, many states don't actually have a third degree murder. It's usually manslaughter or something like that, which sometimes also has degrees, manslaughter in the first, depending on your state. But manslaughter basically means murder without malice, right? So by committing another crime and somebody dies as a result, but not necessarily intentionally, that'd be third degree or manslaughter. Some states do recognize third degree as aggravated, like aggravated arson or aggravated manslaughter. Then we come to the definition of what homicide actually is. And homicide is further described as the killing of one human being by another. That's simple, right? homicide is not always criminal. For example, a lawful execution pursuant to the death penalty is technically homicide, right? We killed him, but it's not criminal homicide. It gets kind of weird down in there, And I kind of discuss that further in the various what I call sides, homicide, familicide, all of those things. I've got a post out there on the psychology of murder, insanity, and murder degrees. So check out our article. So homicide is not necessarily a crime, right? It's a necessary necessary ingredient of the crimes of murder and manslaughter, but there's other cases in which homicide may be committed without criminal intent. Like I said, if it's done in lawful execution of a judicial sentence, if it's self-defense, it's still homicide, but it's self-defense, or something like that. So the term homicide is basically neutral. While it describes the act, it doesn't really have any judgment on it, either moral or legally. And then there's manslaughter. For most, the definition of manslaughter is simply the unlawful killing of a human being without malice. Mostly you're going to find manslaughter is usually a voluntary and an involuntary manslaughter, right? Like a voluntary would be a sudden quarrel or a heat of passion murder, right? It'd be voluntary manslaughter. Involuntary would be something like a car accident. You hit someone, on the road, or you were, doing something, but it wasn't really a felony, and someone died as a result of it. That's involuntary. It can be confusing which you switch and how it goes, but basically, I can tell you a couple of things. If you're going to kill somebody, don't do it in Texas or Florida. They have the death penalty, and they have no problem using it. Okay? So, with all that pre-work said, a little boring, but got to kind of understand it a little better, I've got 4 cases that I'm going to be doing this week. And we're going to start with one that is very near and dear to my heart and absolutely breaks my heart. And that's the death of Kelsey Briggs. Kelsey was a child abuse victim. She was murdered at the home of her biological mother, Ray Don Smith, and her stepfather, Michael Lee Porter. Kelsey's case is the worst case of child abuse I have ever heard of. I'm serious. She was murdered while being closely observed by the Oklahoma Department of Human Services, and her death was ruled as a homicide. There was actually an act that came out as a result of her death. The Kelsey Smith Briggs Child Protection Reform Act was passed in March of 2006 as a result of this heinous crime. And the act provided a way to reform the way courts and the Oklahoma DHS handle cases that are related to child abuse and neglect. In so many of those cases, they give the child right back to the parent, that's been abusing them. And in Kelsey's case, the entire system failed. Everybody failed. We couldn't tell where the abuse was truly coming from. Because everybody abused this child. And so, thank goodness they did the reform, and that will help, I'm sure. Second case is Belinda Temple. Now, this case is kind of strange. In 1999, David Temple murdered his wife by shooting her in the back of the head with a shotgun, killing her and their unborn child. And I specifically state he murdered his wife. That is my true, unbiased opinion. He's charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder, and he appealed twice. He was tried in 2005, convicted, and then the verdict was overturned in 2016. They again tried him in 2019, but the jury could not decide on the sentencing. So he was originally scheduled for resentencing in March of 2020, but then the coronavirus came about, right? The case is now set for resentencing on January 4th, 2021. I, for one, am going to be watching for this verdict. You can read about our profile of this case at a post I've called Justice Deferred. Was a football star, now a murderer, and explaining the devastating death of Belinda Temple. That's another sad case. Catherine Casey, who's one of my favorite true crime authors, wrote an excellent book called Shattered, The True Story of a Mother's Love, in a cold-blooded Texas murder that covers this case up to the first trial. And that's kind of where it stops. So we're going to, I expand on that quite a bit in my posts. Carmen Calabro, that's number 3. He was convicted of 2 counts of second-degree murder, affirmed by the Supreme Court of New York. It's a famous case from 1990 that used forensic odontology to prove the defendant actually murdered the victims. That's the bite mark thing, right? This was also a case that was profiled by the FBI's BAU, Behavioral Analysis Unit, and it was featured in the show and the book called Mindhunter by FBI Special Agent John Douglas. That's very controversial now as far as the bite mark. I know that Ted Bundy also was convicted as part of that bite mark evidence, but there has been recent talk about whether or not, that's truly like a fingerprint, because you think about it, bite marks can change, right? I can get false teeth and they can change tomorrow. So there is some controversial, but it was pretty interesting stuff. So be on the lookout for another murder coming in November, and it's going to be a political murder. It's the death of politician Mark Costello, and I'm going to do that just in time for the election. The last case that we're going to talk about is an Australian murder by degrees, and it was the Byrne murder. And I thought we should kind of look at a case from a case down under. So while the Australian laws are similar in nature, according to the Crimes Act 1900, there are only 2 types of murder and manslaughter. That's it. In the next case, the charge was murder as defined as murder shall be taken to have been committed where the act of the accused or the thing by him or her omitted to be done, causing the death charge, was done or omitted with reckless indifference of human life. Basically the same kind of thing that we have here in the States. This is the interesting thing. In Australia, the murder can be punishable by imprisonment for life or for 25 years. That's it. Anything else is manslaughter. It's just as simple as it can be. But in this case, Carolyn Byrne was an Australian model, and she was murdered by her boyfriend, Gordon Eric Wood, in 1995. After 2 trials, Mr. Wood was found guilty and sentenced. He started his sentence in 2011. In 2012, the Criminal Court of Appeal ruled that the trial was critically flawed and that there was a unique possibility of suicide that should not have been excluded. He was released in 2012, having served 3 years and 2 months in prison. The Crown decided not to retry the case again. So, that's kind of justice undone. And I mean, there's a lot of proof that he did, in fact, kill her. But the court has reversed it after 2 times. They're just not going to try again. That's just the way it goes. So to hear more about these cases, there's going to be links to the actual blog post, and there will be a video probably about every night, if I can do it every night. This week is considered to be Murderer's Row, and you'll hear a video on these cases every night this week. So I want to take a really quick break so that we can get ready for a meditation. And basically all I'm going to do is light my candles and get ready for our meditation. So feel free to take a break and get ready. Okay. Candles. Come on, man. There it goes. Alright, candles are lit. So, we're going to do a quick meditation. It's going to be probably about, 3 minutes, something like that. And it's going to be all about, there we go. I'm going to turn this off. Whoop, that one. Okay. It's basically going to be for, to help us cleanse the air, so to speak, if you will. because some of these cases, this one wasn't too bad tonight, but some of these cases really get to you. And I want to make sure that we've released any negative energy, and things like that. Now, there's going to be a blog post that I talk about, why I've used the things that I've used and how I do my meditation. But if you're ready, let's go ahead and start our meditation. I want you to get into a comfortable position and try to relax. First thing we're going to do is ground ourselves. So think about the root of an old tree. It's firmly in the ground with many branches underneath there. Feel those roots reach up and out towards you. And it's going to attach firmly to your root chakra right about your tailbone. You're now firmly rooted in the earth. Now as you breathe, remember to inhale into your nose and exhale with your mouth. So let's start our breathing. So inhale and exhale. Inhale and exhale. Now, as you continue breathing, I want you to feel your feet relax, your toes. And as the energy flows through you, feel your knees relax. Now your hips and your stomach. Now your shoulders. And your arms kind of feel like loopy, right? Now your fingers. Relax your neck and relax your head. As you breathe, think about the sadness of these cases. With each breath, we're saying that the sadness is too overwhelming to talk about. We're going to allow ourselves to grieve for the victim, and then we're going to heal. Tell yourself the loss of this precious child and these other victims are not gone. They're just temporarily on hiatus. The amethyst that I wear is going to relieve the symptoms of grief and give us peace. I will benefit from its protection, as will you. Tell yourself I release my thoughts into the future and allow my tears to be healing. And I'm thankful for the gifts that this challenge has given me. I allow the energy that flows through me to give the victims peace. We're going to have a very short moment of silence for the victims. Now, as we start back to our beginning, I want you to say, I will release intentions for my healing into the air. I release all the negativity. I release all the anger and frustration. I'm thankful for my many blessings. I am at peace. Now wiggle your toes as you begin to return. Feel that energy waking up your knees and now your hips. Feel the energy coming up through the chakras, the sacral, the solar plexus, and the heart and throat. Feel the roots from that tree loosen and your root chakra relaxes. As the energy comes through the crown chakra and into the third eye, you begin to open your eyes. You are at peace. So, I hope you've enjoyed this, and I hope that it was interesting for you at least. I've got video issues obviously here. Okay, trying to get back to you. Let's just turn it all off. Turn it all off. And so what I want to do right now is to see if there are any questions perhaps that you might have or any particular things that you would like to talk about or say about this or any other cases that we're doing. So go ahead and put that in the chat if you are in fact have questions or thoughts or ideas. Tomorrow night we're going to be going into detail in Kelsey Briggs' case, and be prepared. It's going to be a bad one. Basically, the entire system failed this poor child, and I think that it would do her justice to actually do a meditation for her and to talk about what went wrong there. So, if there are no questions, I will let you guys go. I appreciate you hanging out with me. I hope you enjoy this. Oh, my dog has something to say. If you enjoyed this, and please feel free to leave comments in the chat, in the groups, and we will talk to you later. Bye, y'all.